Hello and welcome back to the Trusted Podcast.
All the way from Spain, our next guest is Steve Martin, founder of Smart Financial.
Steve lives the life first, money second financial planning mindset.
To bring on the next generation, Steve's challenge to businesses is simple: be brave.
Sit back, grab a cuppa, get ready for the content. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us. You've had a long trip. Greg asked you where have you travelled from today, and you humbly said Ancoats, but the south of Spain was probably more accurate, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, started the journey yesterday just to come and see you guys.
Just to come on the
Why
podcast.
not?
You can tell by the time that you've not been in the UK for long.
I know
it's hot now.
It's like everywhere I go, people are looking at me a bit weird going, sounds very Scottish. Doesn't look very Scottish.
It's not that hot up in Scotland.
Yeah, exactly. So I always like to clarify that I live in Spain rather than have them assume I've got a bottle of fake tan that I'm rubbing on. Some of your older listeners might know Tommy Sheridan, a famous Scottish politician who was known as Mr. Permatan. And there was very much an expectation that he was either in the tanning salons or putting the bottle on. So I quite quick to point out that that's not actually the case. So yeah, I left Spain yesterday morning where it was roasting and arrived here where it's roasting, but with a lot less aircon. Hence the reason I'm taking my dress cues from you guys today.
That's it. Dress how you want. Dress how you're comfortable, we always say.
Very comfortable today.
Yeah. No, it's a pleasure to have you, and we'll get on to the living in Spain piece later on. But let's start at the beginning of your journey.
Yeah.
From replying to a vague job ad about financial services to still being in this profession all these years later.
Easy.
Tell us about that.
All these years later.
Couple of years later. So yeah, as a failed medical student who then became a failed politics and management student, the world was not rolling up at my door with graduate training programs and stuff like that. So, back in the days where people advertised jobs in newspapers, there was just this advert saying trainee managers wanted. So despite my hideous university record, I was still arrogant enough to assume that I was a trainee manager as opposed to trainee pleb or something. So I applied for this job, and turned out it was with City Financial Partners. It was in a really nice building in the centre of Glasgow, and everybody was impeccably dressed and looked the part. And I thought, I think that's kind of a gang that I could be part of for a while. So yeah, totally random. I mean, astonishing. The sales techniques that were used in that were just amazing because, so I worked there for a year and a half in the end, commission only. Mm-hmm. My mum still had to buy me the silk tie that because you were only allowed to wear silk ties, but silk ties were about 6 weeks worth of earnings for me. I needed to sell like a £25 a month life assurance policy to pay for that. So, my mum was still buying me clothes and stuff. My dad was giving me money on the side. The old don't tell your mum, don't tell your dad thing that, 10 years later you find out that they were completely in hot with each other about it. But they created this atmosphere of it was a club you wanted to be part of. It was a gang you wanted to be part of. It was a pretty impressive fishing expedition, I guess, from their point of view. And it's bizarre because we were just scumbags flogging life assurance policies. But of the dozen people or so that were part of my, I don't know, you could call it cohort for want of a better description, the majority of them have had successful careers in financial planning or, like decent financial advice, at least, not just, a few of them are in jail, obviously, because they took the ripping people off thing a bit too far.
Yeah.
But yeah, the majority of them made successful careers, either working on the provider side or as a mortgage broker or whatever. So, there was something in that attracted a certain type of person, I guess, that then had the wherewithal to go on and do something different with it, for sure. But yeah, it was a ludicrous experience.
How did you know at what point that would become
a profession rather than just a stepping stone or any other job?
So I don't actually know what the answer is to that, because in the first, it was kind of organised a bit like a cult in that sense. So there was no, Money Marketing Magazine or New Model Advisor didn't exist, but none of those publications were available. They were trying to keep you away from anything else that happened in the world so that it didn't dilute their story. And I think it was probably after I'd left. So there was one day where, we had Friday sales meetings, all the things you would imagine in like Wolf of Wall Street type kind of stuff. And somebody was being lauded for, it was either for selling AVCs to teachers or for transferring final salary teacher pensions out into personal pensions or something. And although they kind of tried to keep you away from the exams as well, because they knew their highest risk point was as soon as you passed your FPC3, and therefore you were able to be classified as competent back in those days, that was the point where people were going to leave. But even at that, I was like, nah, that's not right. We can do this and take people with us. We don't have to be against, our success doesn't have to be to their detriment. So I left there and went to work at a small IFA business that, was kind of a step forward. And then after that, I worked for Haynes Watts, the accountants, and then started to realise actually this can be this. There's an advice element to this that isn't just about intermediation of product in exchange for commission. And I think probably from that point onwards, I started to see that there was probably a different way to go about it. And then I think I've told you guys this story before. The biggest thing that changed my whole approach to it was, even in those days, we were salaried and all that kind of stuff, but everything was still pretty bonus based. Bonus was directly correlated to revenue. And the tax partner and I had been working with this guy that I always think of as being a really old guy. I probably find out he's probably, if you go back in time, he's probably only 5 years older than I am now or something. And we'd done all this IHT planning and stuff like that. And there was a bond that was an integral part of I don't know if it was a DGT or a combination of things. And if it had gone ahead, we were due for 50 grand's worth of fees / commission. And he was happy with the advice, happy with everything else, and then took it away to talk it through with his family. One of his sons was an accountant and came and said, there's no way you're paying 50 grand for that. And they literally took the work that we had done in the financial services team, not the tax bit, and walked into somewhere else and said, we've got the advice, we don't need that, we just need you to implement it. And we got absolutely nothing. And that was the last time I kind of walked away. At first, you start off in your own version of a grief cycle, don't you? You're angry and all that kind of disbelief and then anger. And then eventually when you grow up, you realise, well, you were trying to take the piss, really. You didn't feel like you were, but when you took the kind of conditioning off and just looked at it in isolation, we were trying to take the total mickey. We'd done some great work. It wasn't 50 grand's worth of work. So we really got what we deserved. But the whole framing of how financial planning and financial services delivered was done like that. We'll give you all this stuff away on the basis that you implement your thing with us and that's how we get paid. And I was like, I'm not doing that again, because you got everything that you needed and I got nothing.
Yeah.
So there was the two sides of it. The first was, I'm never going to give that away again, but equally, I'm never going to try and take the mickey as far as how much we should be paid for the work that we're doing. So that, in a way, that was the point where I decided I needed to be a professional rather than the point where I realized that you could make it into a profession, if you like. I didn't really know how I was going to do that. I just knew that I wasn't going to get caught in that kind of contingent space of sort of shit or bust kind of thing again, and I've never ever done that since. And needless to say, we've been paid for the work that we've done, and I never tried to charge too much for it. So a lower supply of Ferraris and such like down the years, but less people who think that they've had their pants pulled down. So.
And it's a fair value add for clients then, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we dig a bit deeper into that then, we know the industry debate and discussion around advice versus financial planning.
Yeah.
For someone who's new into the industry, wanting to learn the difference, and perhaps they fell into a trainee advisor role at ABC Business.
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference of financial advice versus financial planning at a real, basic level?
I can explain what I think is the difference.
Perfect.
I'm not sure I don't think there's an accepted version of it, but for me, the difference is really easy. Financial advice is where the work is predominantly focused around products and the intermediation of products, and financial planning is where the advice is predominantly focused around planning. So where does that money, asset, investment fit in the context of something that's bigger than just that investment on its own? And that's that would be my distinction. And then if you wanted to take it to the third level of when does it become lifestyle financial planning, well, then that's when the true focus is actually on what does all of that mean in somebody's life and lifestyle. So what's important to you in your life first? Can we then build a plan to help you achieve that? And then can we intermediate products or solutions if required in order to fulfill the plan, to fulfill the life strategy, if you like. So
that's really interesting. It's selling the afters. Lifestyle financial planning. So we had a sales trainer, Andy Bounds, on the podcast in the first season.
Yeah.
And he talks about selling the afters. So
sure.
Selling, someone doesn't take on a lawyer because they want a lawyer. They take on a lawyer to stay out of prison. They take on a PT to get less fat, not because you want to pay a PT every month.
Exactly, yeah.
It's the same there, right?
Yeah,
You're saying to a client, here's the outcome. First of all, these are the afters.
Yeah.
Here's what we need to implement to get you there.
Well, it's features and benefits, isn't it? Yeah. In old language. And a lot of this is hard for advisors because historically, product providers provided next to no benefit. So the only thing that they had available to sell was features. So there's a huge group of people who didn't really understand the difference between features and benefits because they were being told features were benefits constantly by the insurance company, reps and stuff like that. But that's the key thing. You have to be able to really sit and say, what do I get out of this? The client, what's the real benefit to me of all of this stuff? I don't care whether I've got a pension or an ISA or a low cost MPS or a high cost something or other. I'm a client. I don't give a monkeys. I'm only interested in what's in it for me.
Yeah.
What do I get at the end of the day? And I think once we as a profession get or stay really focused on that, then everything else starts to fall in place. So it's one of the things that I would always ask my team if they come out of a meeting, especially a first meeting. What is it? What is the client going to get out of having engaged you? Oh, new client, Steve. Brilliant. Oh, cool. Awesome. What are they going to get out of whatever it is that you've just agreed to do for them? And sometimes they look at me and go, don't know. Right, okay. So great job. Somebody's bought into something. We know we're going to provide outsized benefit to them in the end. But that's the thing that we need to continue to think about. What does somebody go home and tell their significant others that they're going to get as a result of working with us? And actually, it doesn't matter whether you're a financial planner or a car salesman or whatever else. Your clients are wanting your afters, as you said before. What do I actually get from? What's the bit that I take away and use in my life? Those other things are just features. They're just building blocks that you use to be able to give me the thing that I want. Those are the things you need to give me the thing that I want. But staying focused on the thing that the client wants, and not really worrying about what the tools are then required to deliver it. And I can talk a little bit more about that if you like. So one of my kind of great tests for the quality of a firm, and I've got very good friends who are going to hate me because of this definition. But one of my definitions is that if the client has no assets, no investable assets, is there still something of value that you can do for them? And if the answer is yes, you've moved beyond the product intermediation and the financial advice stuff. Now, some people will say, yes, of course there is, but we don't want to as a business. And that's okay. I and might be true, but it might not be true. It might be that actually they're still associating their value to products and reduced cost and tax efficiency and investment returns and future outcomes. But for other films, there will be, actually, we've looked at that and we've done it before, but it's difficult for us to scale, it's difficult for us to train, it's difficult for us to deliver consistently across the whole business. So we don't want to do it, but we absolutely see what you mean. But that's my first question always. If I go nosing at somebody's website, does it look like the service that they provide is something that I could go and buy without giving them my money to look after, whether I've got it or not?
I've told this story before, but I think it's pertinent. I'm getting married on Saturday. And in the run up to that, I spoke to my mother-in-law who said, we want to give you some money for the wedding. And I said, yeah, that's great. She said, how much can I give you tax efficiently?
Yeah.
I said, you should ask your advisor. And she replied, well, he just does my investments. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is, one, you need a new advisor. But it's obviously hard with family money, isn't it, to get them to see differently. They have changed now, which is good news.
Yeah.
But that was a really poignant moment of thinking, even in this age where people are starting to refer to themselves as planners more often than advisors, there's still a deep trust deficit. And that's something that we've spoken about in the past.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, how do you at Smart and encourage the rest of the team to follow through that, but truly live that, to try and give people that kind of resurgence of trust?
Well, there's no plan B for starters. So in Smart, you can't come to us and not get the full lifestyle financial planning service. It's literally, it's not a one size fits all, but it's one service that has to work for you as a client. Otherwise, we won't work with you, and so somebody can come along and say, I've got £10 million to invest. I don't want to talk to you about all that cuddly, feely crap that you want to ask me about. Okay, well, we're not the right firm for you. So we make it easy for them to follow that model, but we make it much harder for them, of course, because there's no easy version. So it literally is every client, every time, no exceptions, full financial planning, or we don't know how to work with you. And I think, I used to be more puritanical, which will be astonishing to anybody listening based on what I've said so far, but I used to be more puritanical about it. But I do recognise that there is a space in the world for investment management. There's a space in the world for product-related advice. But it's the terminology that bugs me. The FCA has never seen fit, or anybody's never seen fit to control who's allowed to call themselves what at what point. And it's that if you don't want to do planning, don't call yourself a planner. If you're not life focused, don't call yourself a lifestyle financial planner. And those distinctions actually for me are much more important nowadays than whether people are independent or tied or multi-tied or whatever that is, because that's the true distinction. So I think that's where it's muddied and that's where it's hard, because we're still a total cottage industry, cottage profession, tiny little businesses. You look at fabulous businesses like Paradigm Norton. In any other field, that's a tiny business. But it's a massive business relative for us. And, your networks and stuff, they're not businesses. They're just, tools to enable people to trade and to give advice. And even your big nationals that are they're not a proper business. If you go to see somebody in one office or another office, you'll get an active solution from one and a passive solution from another, and platform A from one and platform B from the other, and all that kind of thing. They're not proper businesses in that, or not big businesses in that sense. So it's really hard when everything's so disparate and separate to get that kind of common message and common story that can be taken out to the public to help them understand the difference between these various titles. And then there's no control over who can use what. You can't use chartered, you can't use certified unless somebody is allowing you to do so. But beyond that, you can call yourself whatever you like. And that really doesn't help with the the public for sure.
I think it's interesting that it doesn't help on the public to the retail client, but we're also seeing a massive gap coming up in financial advisors, the amount of people that need financial advice or financial planning, and the amount of financial planners, that are coming through the ranks. I know that Smart have got your future financial planning job role, and you're recruiting for that at the moment. Talk to us a bit more about, how do we bridge this gap of people that need advice and people that are going to give advice and planning? How do we turn that around?
I think there's a few things with that. Yeah, I don't buy into this advice gap that gets talked about all the time. You'll be familiar with Phil Billingham, or certainly people of a certain age will be familiar with Phil Billingham. Fabulous guy
Great guy.
Who's been around for forever. I mean, he must be about 100 now. And he used to say, the vast majority of people don't need advice. They just need to pay down their debt, spend less than they earn, pay down their debt, and start to accumulate some savings. And that for the vast majority of people, that's sufficient to move them forward from where they are just now. And I still think that's the case. I think for an awful lot of people, you don't need the level of complexity that comes by having a bespoke 10-year experience, level 7 qualified, life-focused, hybrid life coach, financial advisor, guru kind of thing to help you navigate the fact that you earn 50 grand a year and you spend 60 grand a year. Like, some of this stuff is relatively straightforward. And there's all the information in the world, and AI is going to help answer some of these more straightforward questions. So I just don't buy this whole advice gap thing that's talked about. I think it just used to fill column inches half the time. What I do think has been lost, actually, and this is a real fail from 30 years ago or something, that because of the costs associated in delivering any of the financial advice, any of the 3 levels that I talked about earlier, what you're not getting is financial selling to people who need to be financially sold to. So, when people of my parents' generation were born, their parents would take out 10-year savings plans and stuff with a man from the Pru, and it was always a man, or the Co-op or Scottish Widows or something like that. And they did it because somebody went and told them a story that scared them about an undesirable outcome, and the solution was to save £1 a week or £5 a month or something. And then somebody would come round from the industrial branch and collect the money physically. But the majority of those people would never have done anything about it unless somebody'd gone to them to sell them into the need to do that, or to sell them into the need for a life assurance policy. You've just had some kids. The first thing you do is not put food on the table. It's put 10 quid a month into a life assurance policy so that if you're dead, your child can still eat. That's been lost. And that's something that people don't seek for themselves. So I think that, for me, is the bit that's missing, not the advice gap bit. The advice gap is Phil's 3 parts of advice. And once you've dealt with those 3 bits of advice, you're probably moving to a situation where you can go and see an advisory firm, whichever one of those 3 levels you want to, in order to get some help to take it further. As the question about how to bring people in, we are not finding that there's a lack of people that want to come into the profession. What's missing is a lack of decent quality firms giving them those opportunities. And that bit I just don't understand. Because I'm not doing this as a charity, right? We're not hiring our 5th person working through our planner development program as a gift to the profession. I'm doing it because it's what my business needs to grow in the future. And that you can take people on a developmental journey to turn them into being a lifestyle financial planner and use them for administrative and technical type functions that the business needs as you go along. And when we can come on and talk about AI and how that will affect that in the future, but I just don't understand why firms can't look at it and say, right, if I have to pay 25 grand a year for an admin person in my business. Why don't I pay £25,000 a year for someone who's going to do that, but with a mindset that says that they want to then go on and do more? And that's not to run down somebody who just wants to be an admin person, but I'd rather have somebody who's looking at that admin job through the eyes of the client or through their future development or their future progression, rather than just it's a piece of paper that needs shoveled around the desk and something needs filed and filled in. So that I don't get. It's not that hard. Is it? I don't know. I don't think it's that hard a thing to do. There's a good number of firms out there that are doing it. The guys at Boost are consistently take people on. I'm going to get shot by people who I'm not mentioning now, but there are firms out there doing it. It's not that difficult a thing to do, and this is certainly one area where the firms do collaborate effectively together. If somebody phones me up and says, somebody in Northern Ireland messaged me recently saying, I see you're hiring another future planner. I've got somebody and I don't really know what to do with them. So after going, for fuck's sake, did you not think about that in advance? There's a version, I'm not going to give away every single nuanced part of our plan, because there's an awful lot of blood, sweat and tears has gone into trying to build something that we think will produce the right outcomes. But I can give people a higher level version of what it is that we're doing to at least give them a sort of framework. I know the Boost guys give that out. They've got this picture thing and they're happy to tell people what exams they want people to pass at each stage in the process. And we've got a slightly different view on how we think that should be done. So we would rather have people do some of the level 4 and level 6 exams concurrently, rather than do the 4s and then the 6s and stuff. But you're kind of tinkering around the edges really with some of that. So yeah, that's the bit that disappoints me. I think that there's a lack of imagination, I think, around firms to think about how could we do this, and what is the benefits to us of having younger, bright people who are working towards their own futures in your business. I just don't see why you wouldn't want that. And I think it helps keep me young, helps keep me challenged. We're, as we touched on before, we've got some interviews and stuff to do to hire the next person. The rest of my week will be spent trying to give training and coaching and support to my existing team to help them move on and move forward. And if you've never done it, you should try doing it. It's a lot harder to actually teach people to do things than it is to do them, especially if you've done them for a long time. But surely that's a good thing rather than a bad thing. It gives you an opportunity to kind of lift yourself out and look at yourself and, I wonder why I do that. I know for an absolute certainty, anytime I do any training event, the next client meeting I have afterwards is miles better than the one beforehand, even if I've been the one delivering on my own the entire training. Because you're being forced to look again at the building blocks of what you do and why you do it, and constantly reevaluate. If I'm going to teach this on to somebody else, I better know why it's important, because I know I'm going to be asking them to do things that are difficult. And I'm not going to do that. I might do that just for my own entertainment. But, in general, you're not going to do that for your own entertainment. You're going to ask people to do difficult things like role play and stand up and present in front of other people, because you genuinely believe that those are the things that people need to do to move forward. So for me, it's all just upside around the kind of culture that you want in your business, the kind of people that you want around in your business. I don't want to be surrounded by people who are just at static levels, happy doing their thing. And people will tell me, you can't build teams full of everybody who wants to be the next superstar. You need people who are just happy doing the role that they're in. And I do understand that. But for me, anyway, the majority need to be people who are pushing me to be better as much as I'm pushing them to be better. Or I know I have to, I need to keep running ahead of them. Otherwise, they're going to catch me up. That sort of brilliant thing that Keely Hodgson, the famous 800 meter runner, she was supposed to be running her 400 meters yesterday or something and pulled out, but she'd been beaten earlier this season a couple of weeks ago. But you kind of thought that from over a year ago, she was literally unbeatable. The only question was, when did she break the world record and how many medals did she win? And there's another lady beat her a couple of weeks ago, and she came out and she said, well, having somebody like that around is going to push me on to do better. So she's much more likely now actually to break the world. She probably would have done it anyway because she broke the indoor one, but she's much more likely to break this 40-plus-year-old world record now that she's got somebody else to chase her. You go back all the way back to Roger Bannister in the 4-minute mile.
Yeah,
I could see it was written on your face, actually. That's funny. I could see you were thinking that there was him and another guy were constantly at it, trying to do it. And then when Roger Bannister did it, I can't remember the stats, it was something like 15 people ran under, 4 minutes within the next year, having spent 5 years desperately trying to do it. That, you're inspiring other people, you're inspiring yourself, the energy goes round in a circle, I think, in that sense that, you bring some and you gather some off other people. And if everybody's trying to get better constantly at what they're trying to do, then it's another great way to do it. And the minute you think you've got it cracked, somebody's going to come and ask you something. You're like, no idea. And then you're back to school for a day and you've got to go and find the answer. Yeah. Or you find the answer with them, or they go and find the answer and then they teach you or whatever. So that bit I don't get. So I suppose a very, very long answer, as I'm known for, to the question about, how do we get more people involved? I think we need to lean on firms and help them understand that this is a positive thing for them, that it's I've heard people say, well, what if you train them up and they leave? So what?
What if you don't train them when they stay?
Well, yeah, it's the
I know
old...
you're going to say that.
Yeah, but it's a great equivalent. What if you don't and they stay? But what if you do and they leave? So we've, as I say, we've got 4 people going through that program. The 5th one, hopefully, will be appointed this week. But we'll have had at least another 5. I don't think it'll be as many as 10, but at least another 5 people who've come through a version of that program since SMART was started in 2008. And do I grudge the fact that they're still not? No. I celebrate the fact anytime I see them doing well, going, no, if it wasn't for me, that wouldn't be them.
Yeah. They
wouldn't be there if it wasn't for me. So I don't feel any need to, where we're at currently, my objective for the business is to grow the business fast enough that nobody needs to leave. But if that ends up not being the case, what have I done? I've taken somebody at no or next to no level. I've got them through, assuming they stay at the end of the course, to chartered certified with a coaching qualification, having spent probably 5 years in the business that's busting its ass to do the best possible lifestyle financial planning it can do, and sent them off in the world to be another advocate for good, to go and set up their own business, to go and work in another business. And if you're a business owner watching this thinking, well, why would you want to do that? If I can't get something useful out of that person during that 5-year period, then I'm doing something really badly wrong.
Yeah.
Who's the second person that sits in a meeting? Who's taking notes? Who's writing suitability letters? Who meets with product providers? Well, hardly anybody, but on the few that we like in and we talk to. Who meets with them and finds out what's going on? There are so many jobs and functions in a business that need to be carried out. Can you genuinely say that you could have somebody around for 5 years that they couldn't add any value whatsoever to the business? And I always kind of think of that a little bit like, it's the All Blacks thing, isn't it? The whole point is you leave the jersey in a better place than you found it. So how do I make sure that each person that comes through the business leaves something positive behind? So something that we did is now done better than it was done before as a result of like a fresh pair of eyes coming in to have a look at it, or some new tech. I mean, again, touching on tech again, who's most likely to be able to take advantage of the tech that's coming at us like a fire hose at the moment? Is it people in their 50s and 60s and 70s, or is it people in their early 20s and 30s?
Probably Gen Z who've had a phone in their hand since they were
you would think so.
Small.
And, how do we change and improve our businesses going forward? Well, definitely technology is going to be a huge part of that. So you're going to try and take someone who's done something the same way for the last 30 years and ask them to change. Well, maybe. But if you're going to go and ask them to be the person that leads on behalf of your business to work out how you're going to change and how you're going to adopt all that stuff into your business, that doesn't seem like a great idea. It's got to be more likely that people who are new and fresh and their neural pathways are still not all fully built and all that kind of stuff to be able to go out and re-envisage how some of the things that you're doing in your business. So I think the answer is there. The professional bodies could definitely do better, but somehow or other, just to get people that are running businesses to be a little bit braver and say, do you know what, I'm going to take this person on. We put all of our people through an apprenticeship program. So we've had 3 gone through the CII RO apprenticeship version. It's not with, I think it's with Skills something or other. And then we found somebody else because one of our team wanted to go through the CISI route. So there's an apprenticeship program that supports that. I can't remember all the details, but at its absolute minimum, it costs us either nothing or next to nothing for the exams. They get some additional external support and training. And if you wanted to, it means that you can pay the apprenticeship minimum wage as opposed to the full minimum wage. So if you were tight, actually putting someone on an apprenticeship and development program is the cheapest way to bring an extra member of staff into your team. So there's stuff out there to help you and make life easier if you're just prepared to kind of dip your toe in the water and say, how about it? And then if people are still like, oh, I don't know if I want to this, that, or the next thing, you can't work forever. Like I still believe I'm going to live forever, right? Well, not quite Brian Johnson.
I was going to say, you're like Brian Johnson, aren't you, with your hyperbolic chamber and your...
Yeah, I'm missing the $500 million I think that would complete the parallel. But I think I'm going to work forever. I think I'm going to live forever. But you know that at some point that's not going to be the case. So, what do you want to do with your business when you're not there to run it anymore, or able to do it, or shouldn't be doing it?
Like Justin King's, isn't it? Like we were saying that beforehand.
Yeah, Justin's a great guy, and he's a great example of that. You need a solution somehow. So I would much rather be in a situation where, when I've decided I've had enough, I have got people coming through my business that I've trained in my unique version of how the world should be constructed to pick up and keep that business moving forward and keep me in a nice lifestyle whilst I potter around my garden with a gin and tonic or something and don't do any work. Although I think I'd said to you guys before, I'm very excited at the prospect of emulating Barry Hearn and turning up in a morning, offering nothing of any value whatsoever, just tormenting the people in the business and then going off fishing for the afternoon. That really appeals to me. And I don't even really fish, but I think I could be all right at that. So, all of those things that, what is your succession plan? If you want to start thinking about your succession plan when you're old and tired, you're stuffed. Your succession plan is to sell to somebody that you really don't want to sell to. And all that's going to happen is you're going to spend the next few years persuading yourself that that's okay. When you know it's not okay, and I know it's not okay, and you guys know it's not okay to sell out to one of these consolidators because they're not even trying to embody the same values and approach and care and concern about clients. But if you don't do anything different, then you have no choice. So why not do something different? Recognize that the first person you hire won't be your successor. Like, don't set yourself up for fail. Well, I've never done this before. I'm going to go and hire one person. They're going to be amazing. They're going to stay forever and they're going to buy me out of my business. That's not real either. But at least if you start the process and give it a try and say, right, I had the first person, we got to the end of their apprenticeship period. I didn't have an ongoing role for them. Well, you've launched somebody off into the world who's now level 4 qualified. They've got a year's worth of experience. You have massively increased their employability. For the firm that's not prepared to take that step, they might be able to take that person on at the next level. So you've made a positive contribution. As I said before, you must have got something useful out of the process, either personally through your own development to try and help the new person, or something useful or interesting that you've done around your business. And then you hunker down, have a look, what worked, what didn't work, why did we not think this was the right thing to do? And then I'm going to try again. I'm going to get somebody else and I'm going to move them through the process, and maybe we'll carry them through to what we would call stage 3. So sort of, chartered level, without being certified, maybe not even signed off as competent at that point. But you'll probably get them to roughly chartered, sign them off as competent, at least in in certain areas that you're happy that they are actually competent. I don't mean do it arbitrarily. And then pass them on at that point. So now you're sending somebody who's chartered or nearly chartered out into the world with their competent advisor status, who's on the FCA register. Again, for the firms that aren't prepared to come further down the process, that's a huge step in the right direction for them. So, I think sometimes we beat ourselves up in our own head that people think, well, what if I can't see how I can keep this person for 5 years? Don't set yourself that standard. Just remember that as long as you don't do wrong by them, at whatever point you feel that you can't afford them, you can't support them, they're not the right person for you, you're going to put them out into the market in a much better place than they were when they came to you in the first place. And if all you ever do is take people on and pay them £10 an hour and put them through an apprenticeship program for a year and a half and then boot them out into the market so you can get your next £10 an hour person in, you're still doing a huge contribution to that person that you've given them that entry pathway to the profession. And then at some point, maybe somebody actually decides that they want to stay. Yeah. As I say, I just don't see the downsides for any of that.
Love that.
You've given a few nuggets away there, Steve, on how Smart runs. Thinking about things like overcoming the trust deficit, understanding how you deliver value by selling afters. I think another piece here about businesses being brave, taking on maybe those younger people. And you've mentioned a few notable examples, Boost, Justin at MFP, Paradigm Norton, where people are getting it right.
Yeah.
When we started Trusted, it was really to help break down some of the silos that people find themselves in, whether that's product or whether that's advice, where you do have your own individual way of doing things and maybe you're a bit blinkered to the market. How can we promote collaboration without compromising the competitive nature of what is a cottage industry?
I think the answer is, to a certain extent, is in the question, how much are we really competing with each other? I know back in the day that fiscal engineers and Cooper Parry, who were in very similar space, targeting a very particular type of, business seller with wealth over, I don't know what it was, £5-10 million or something. They were genuinely in competition. Theoretically, we're all in competition with everybody. Everybody's in competition with St. James's Place, the internet, ChatGPT and everything else. But on a practical level of being in proper competition, we're not really in competition with each other. And I think, this was something that the IFP did fabulously in the past. This is a hankering old man chat back in my day, but the IFP did a brilliant job of that. And an awful lot of the things that Smart does and stands for now are things that I learned through other people sharing through the IFP in the past, which is why when it was, 2010 maybe, I became the branch chairman for Manchester, because I got loads out of it, but I also wanted to make sure that continued for other people, but I also wanted to make sure that what I was getting out of it would continue and grow as it went forward. So for me, that was an opportunity before we had anything like this to get people that I looked up to, like Jason Butler and Alan Smith and Pete Matthew. He spoke for the very first time at the Manchester IFP branch. I remember him being petrified at the time, and you look at him now, like the most accomplished guy you'd ever see. Tina Weeks came and spoke, and it was the first time that she'd ever done anything like that. And she's gone on and, had her Know Thyself and all the various other things with Kinder that Tina's been involved in down the years. And so it was an opportunity I saw it as an opportunity to get people that I wanted to learn from to come and talk to a group. But really, it was just for my benefit. And if other people thought it was valuable, then great. But
exactly what this was.
It's exactly what this is. And that's why it works, isn't it? And actually, it became, at first I was like, oh, you're so selfish about it. You're just doing it for yourself. And then I'm like, don't be stupid. I'm genuinely choosing people that I think can teach me something. why would they not be able to teach other people something as well?
That's the battle we've had as well, is constantly, we've always said, as long as we pick something up, that's great.
Yeah.
And then if anybody else, even if it's one person viewing this.
Interesting.
Exactly.
So,
and that will keep you doing it as well. That's the other thing. Like, as soon as you get to the point where you don't feel that you're learning anything, then your enthusiasm's going to drip away. But if you've got a curious mind and you're interested in learning and developing yourself, the likelihood of people not getting value out of that's next to, other than today, of course, but this is next to nothing. And it was, when we had our Training Academy podcast as well, the reason that stopped is that we felt we weren't learning anything new. So we did our first series on first meetings, and we talked to everybody that we knew of that we thought might be able to teach us something. And then even within people like Justin and stuff like that, we're on that as well. And in the end, it wasn't that we'd run out of people, but we felt that everybody had said everything. We were constantly then going, oh, I remember Brian Hill saying that, or I remember so-and-so saying that, I remember somebody else saying that. At which point we thought, well, if we're getting bored of hearing the same stories, not the people, but just the same stories, then maybe the listeners are as well. And so we kind of stopped doing it at that point. But that was, we had one subject, which is how do you conduct a first meeting with clients? And there'd be, I don't know if there's 25 or 30 podcasts or something, they're still there that people can go and listen to. There's nothing, it's evergreen content. There's nothing of the moment about that. None of it's regulated or technical or anything. Because we felt that was, if you don't get that bit right, then you're never taking people on who actually want the service that you want to provide. So whether it's a day, a week, a month, or a year later, there's going to be conflict between the expectation that the client has for what you're going to do for them and the thing that you want to deliver. And that if you could get that first engagement right, you would bring on the right people, and you would filter out the people that weren't going to be right for you. Which was great, because then they could go and find somebody that's right for them, and you've got a space for somebody else that's right for you. Yeah, it kind of start as you mean to continue kind of thing. If you don't get it right on day one, you're never going to get it right afterwards. And we've had a few people down the years, actually, when we talk about them, because there's not been all that many, but we've had a few people slip through the net where our filter hasn't been all that effective, and they never ever last eventually. There was one chap, and he came in a slightly circuitous route. We used to do some work with a few companies as a sort of employee benefits advisor kind of thing. And this chap had sort of moved from that world into our private client world. But it was comical. Like, every time we would meet, he would want to talk about alpha and beta and performance and comparisons and stuff. And we would want to talk about life, love, and the universe. And we would kind of tolerate him, and he would tolerate us. And eventually we said to him, like, is this ever going to change? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you always want to talk about this stuff, and you are literally the only person that we talk to about this. And you are the most resistant to talk to us about the other stuff that we're interested in. And he's like, well, yeah, I did kind of notice that, you always, like, what do you want to talk to me about all that crap for? I just said to him, like, this, why don't we separate as friends, and we'll help you find somebody who wants to talk to you about what you want to talk about, because we're going to stop talking to you about that, because we basically do it as a special for you. And that's no use for us as a business. But as a general rule, if you're really clear about what you stand for, and you're really genuinely filtering people you meet to make sure they're the right people for you, you shouldn't need to do that later on down the line. And then everything becomes a bit more straightforward after that.
Definitely. Really just conscious of time. Really enjoyed our chat so far. I think listeners and viewers will be coming to the end of their 10K runs now, or arriving at the next meeting in the car. One last question for you, Steve. What does the industry need to do in the next 5 years that is too uncomfortable to face at the moment?
That's a hardened up question than the one you told me you were going to ask. What does it need to do? Well, if we swap industry for profession, and we can then talk about the people who are trying to do the same sort of thing that that I am, genuinely, I don't think they need to do anything different. You know, we're in a world where demand's increasing. Financial life is only getting more and more complicated. Successive governments have created more and more. You know, we've got the most complicated tax, or whatever it is, the most number of pages in the tax guide in the whole world or something. People aren't able to navigate that successfully for themselves. And as AI comes along, the utility is enormous. Like, it's so exciting to be able to look at how we can use it to help make our business more efficient. But I absolutely believe that in the same way that when Robo came along, it didn't really take off, that people need to feel, I believe people need to feel that somebody else is in their story with them, and that they can carry on their life knowing that somebody else is also invested in the success of what it is that they are trying to achieve. And we had a brilliant example of this recently, a chap who came for a meeting, and I think we were at implementation stage. So we would have like a planning meeting, an initial meeting to work out whether we're a good fit. We then have a data gathering exercise to make sure that we have all the information that we need. And then we'd have a planning meeting where we would, you know, replay that back to them and balance it against their objectives and stuff and see where we're up to and see whatever changes needed to be made. So that would be the first phase. So we would agree that we were going to implement whatever it was needed to change in order to move this family towards its objectives. And this guy came along and he said, oh, I've been on ChatGPT. It's like, oh, brilliant. And he said, I'd love to hear what you've got to say and how that will compare with what ChatGPT said. And I was like, nah, no chance. What did it tell you? And then we can, you know, we've got a presentation and stuff we can take you through. Like, I can't re-magic it, but just tell me what it had. And anyway, so we had a chat, and it was mostly good. There was a couple of things that were absolutely fundamentally wrong, but that will go in time. And I said to him, I was joking, but I said, I'm so glad it's got a couple of things wrong. Otherwise, there'll be no need for us. And he looked horrified, like absolutely horrified. And he looked at me and said, oh, please don't think for 1 minute that the reason that I was doing that was because I think I can do this myself. Let me assure you, there is no part of my life am I sitting across the dinner table from my wife being responsible for our money. Never in a million years. The reason I looked it up and wanted to look was so that I didn't feel like an idiot in this meeting. I wanted to come informed. And I said to him, that's been brilliant, because we've been able to have a higher level conversation because you understood the basics. So we could have a slightly more kind of detailed or slightly more technical conversation because that's how your brain works and that's the kind of information that you're interested in. And he said, the last thing in the world I want is to be responsible for this. I just need to feel that I understand. And for me, it was a tool to help make sure that I could understand enough. But I need somebody else to have the responsibility for this. I'm not taking this responsibility. Yeah. So we had that story. We had another couple where they came in and they'd, you know, all sorts of stuff. But basically, the short version is that they had used Claude to prepare for a meeting with a financial planner. They'd gone in and said, what do we need to do in advance? What questions should we ask? What should we expect as an outcome? How should we front up basically to a meeting with a financial planner to make sure that we get the most out of it? And that's how they'd used it. So they came with reams of data and they'd analysed their bank statements and all sorts of stuff with a whole list of stuff that they wanted to go through. So I think the thing that we have, there's two answers to that. Nothing consequential is going to happen in 5 years.
Yeah.
People have relationships with existing people, and whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, much to the irritation of the profession as a whole, they stay loyal to the people that they've worked with. So I don't think people are going to be, en masse, are not going to be breaking 5, 10, 15, 20-year relationships with people. However, the new people who are coming into money, the new people that are inheriting money from their generations or progressing through to the point where that they want to take advice, then that distinction that we talked about at the beginning of financial advisor, financial planner, lifestyle financial planner, AI is going to be able to do as good, if not a better job as a financial advisor by my definitions. It's probably going to be able to do as good a job as a financial planner by my definitions. So if you're not in this space where you're connecting with them on a human level and giving them that confidence and reassurance that they're on the right path and they can spend 364 days a year enjoying their life and worrying about their finances, as opposed to spending the whole year worrying about it, then life's going to get harder for you, I think, as time moves on, because people will get more and more confident in trusting the machine to do the basics and the mechanics. I'm not going to trust at this stage co-work to tell me where to go and eat. I'm very happy to trust it to book my restaurant booking for me because I'm lazy. But I'm still going to want to talk to another human who I have confidence likes the sort of food that I like in the kind of way that I would like it in order to choose where I'm going to go. And then I'm going to use the machine to help me get there. And I think we need to think as planners and firms, are we in the book in the restaurant space, or are we in the person who's guiding somebody else as to where they should go and eat because it's something that they're going to like?
Well, Steve, that's been an hour. Has it flown by?
It's flown by.
It's flown by. Well, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time.
It's my pleasure.
Come and see us. I know you've got a busy schedule this week. So,
yeah,
from everyone at the Trusted Podcast, that's a wrap. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.